Give me this
Kevin?
paper.
I mean, I got it. Let him sit down.
We're waiting for Dr. Little. Let's wait a few
No
minutes.
words from him.
Let's wait. Well, he's a doctor, he's a surgeon, and let's give him a few minutes.
So Ed, thank you for removing those signs. I was picturing all these dead snowmobilers.
I didn't remove any time.
But you didn't remove them? Somebody did.
You're supposed to take credit for it. You're like, you're welcome. I did a great job.
Thank you.
That's a softball for you.
I thought they were gone, but
Wonder who took them. Huh.
took it really.
There's gonna be any snowmobiles on the rail trail for a while.
Well, that's the truth. Unless they're fantasizers.
I have not seen the river as high as it is at the moment. The island is practically covered.
It's incredible. And it's so loud.
We have a little stream
Well-
across from my house and you just
Russell
hear it, like,
Patch used to say.
everything closed. You
The
can hear it.
Connecticut
Yeah,
River
it's-
rises.
It's nice though. I like it.
And does. But the Mascoma has really got a lot warmer.
Well,
Everything else.
if you saw the water coming off of the hill at La Salette yesterday when it was raining, you would have been,
It's scary.
it was crazy, the water coming down it.
I didn't think the ground was frozen. Here,
Sure. Oh, it's been frozen for months.
Yeah.
not really frozen solid.
You can't get a shovel in it.
Really?
Daniels Marsh had 3 inches of ice on the top of it.
Wow, I did not know that, because my front
Well, it
yard,
doesn't anymore now. obviously, but-
my perennial garden had this great big puddle. Hey, hi, Ryan.
We got spared though. You think we got 1.5 inches? Other places got 4 or 5 inches.
Yeah.
We got 5 inches.
How much did we get?
I think 1.5 inches.
Inch and a half? I didn't put my rain gauge up because it's finished.
Right. I
You wouldn't
didn't
think you'd get there, you know?
either. Mine crashed last year.
Okay, it is 5:32. And the meeting will come to order. And what business is tonight is the way I want to run it is this. Each of us will go around and state our proposals that we think ought to be. I will be last. I have mine on my computer and we can edit because I wasn't sure if you'd be healthy. And I'm so glad you're here and healthy. So we can come up with a good proposal. We will then all come to the select board meeting at 6 p.m.
On January 2nd.
on January 2nd. I will have a paper packet of minutes with our proposal on top to present to the select board. And we will stay for them to ask questions and then we're done. And other thing I will say at the beginning, I'll say at the end, and I think we've done a really good job. We have talked to everybody we could buttonhole and we have listened to them and I didn't get to go, but people went and looked at it. I think we've done a really good job. So Tom, since you're sitting over there, you want to be first?
Sure, I can do that. I have a copy for everybody here, so
Oh, good.
pass these down. Give me one for everyone. I just tweaked what I presented last week. And I'll kind of emphasize the little tweaks that I had done. Again, just to restate what I did last time, I addressed this as if it's from all of us. Just thought it was easier to kind of draft it that way. And I thought it might help in the final draft mode that we have. So the subject did not change. It's recommendation for map 2, lot 29, property on Methodist Hill Road. The objective of this committee was to determine the best use for the property and address to the select board of the town of Enfield, New Hampshire. So, and I will say, I didn't get a chance to say it last time. I've been going back and forth a lot on this, whether 100% to conservation or partial to using some for home building. And I would have to say, almost every other day in the paper, if not every day in the paper, there's talk about the housing shortage. So I think that we should consider a minimal number of properties on the lot. So with that in mind, I recommended that the property Methodist will be subdivided into 2 properties to be sold at auction at a cost just over back taxes owed, plus any administrative and legal fees associated with the sale. I made this smaller, and I'm hoping this can be done, and I'm not sure because I know it's zone 5. But I would like, if we can, have the first subdivided property be approximately 10 acres as opposed to the 20 that I had last meeting. Again, at the same location, southeast corner, and can be used to 4 to 5 housing development with each property accessible from Methodist Hill Road and restricted to 2 to 2.5 acres each. I don't know if we can do that, but I was hoping we can somehow do that.
I would highly recommend we don't, and it's the same thing I said with Johnson, is we shouldn't be recommending something other than what our zoning is written for. I mean,
Okay.
technically, someone could go get a variance and possibly get it approved, but I don't think the town should be saying we should break our own rules and do this.
Okay, then I'm just, can we, I know a property that I owned in South Berwick, Maine, it was about 5 acres, so about the same as we're talking about. But I had a certain distance, and beyond that was considered resource protection zone, and I could not cut down a tree, I couldn't do anything with it. I don't know if that's possible, something along those lines, to restrict how much trees they can cut down and clear for their property.
That's not in our zoning ordinance at this point.
we maybe-
What does, that
some of
doesn't
that
mean it's a
be
bad
harder?
idea, it just means it isn't there.
But can I just, I was speaking to that point?
So we could try to put that type of restriction on it. It'd be a little harder and it might make it harder to sell, but there's a possibility of doing that.
Okay, so I would recommend if we can, we try to do that. So the remaining, it would be either 80 to 90 acres. So in this case, I guess with that restriction, it would be 80 acres shall be designation for conservation use only with the ability to develop trails on it for hiking, mountain biking, snowshoeing, and cross-country skiing. It must also be available and accessible to the public. The Enfield Conservation Commission, this is just a recommendation, should contact the new owner of this property to help in the development of trails. And they had mentioned at our last meeting that they would be more than willing to do that. To minimize the impact on wildlife and to maintain the serenity of this area, I believe snowmobiles and ATVs should be prohibited. And again, for the safety of nearby homeowners and people using these trails for recreational purposes, I think hunting should also be prohibited. And then the following reasons is because the overwhelming feedback we received from the abutters and other Enfield residents is that the primary use for this property should be for recreational purposes. And some of the main points that were made was to preserve the history of the land, to maintain the wildlife habitat, and to have a conservation area in this part of town. Point number 2 is this proposal does adhere to the town's master plan, including providing much needed housing, but also maintaining the rural character of the town. Now, this is the point I kind of took off a little bit on what Jason had said at the last meeting. This housing and kind of what we heard from the developers, most likely going to be for middle income families. But I think it will likely preserve, and this is the point Jason made last time, housing that would otherwise have been bought and upgraded or maybe moved from. So the net results, I think, will still help to create lower income housing. And I think that was a good point Jason made last time, and I kind of wanted to just reiterate that when we think about this, and I know, Bob, you were really concerned about, if we could develop this into low income housing, maybe not in this property, but the net results could be somewhat low income housing could be available. I was, from what we learned a lot, I definitely wanted to have a proposal that was the best economic benefit for the town. And I think this is it. By selling the property at no cost, it provides future tax revenue from both the land and any housing development and doesn't have any cost to the town. And I think that's important myself. I made the point, we know the Hinshaws, which are abutters to this property, have expressed a strong desire to purchase it for conservation. So the great news is the town already has a buyer for the property. whatever we decide for the final conservation amount. And then we're talking 4 to 5 houses that would be developed on the property. I think would only have minimal impact on the town's resources. They're already going in that area. Traffic and water use in the area, I think would be minimal impact. And I know it's a major concern for the abutters in the town, but I think you do. Sure. That's. Any questions on this?
I think what we'll do is we'll have a go round
Okay.
and then we'll open it up to discuss what we got.
Sure.
Because that way everybody gets their say, and I'll go be last, Tom. Jason, you're next.
I didn't bring anything prepared this time. Largely, my opinion hasn't really changed since what I proposed at our last meeting. I'm largely in line with what Tom has here. I think the challenge would be, I would not do 2 on a 2.5 acres each lot, for the reasons Ed said. That's not what the zoning says to begin with, and I don't think the town should be breaking its own rules when we enforce those rules on other people. And I actually think if you kept them to 5 acres, it would actually keep the area more rural anyway, rather than having them more clustered together. That would obviously subjective, and that's just kind of my opinion. The one thing I kind of did change in my opinion from last time. I had said that I think the town should be the one that subdivides it to have more control. But I'm really sensitive to the comments you made because, you know, you live this is your job and this is your expertise, and you're pretty adamant that the town probably shouldn't take that on. So you have your reasons for thinking that way, and I'm sure they're more valid than mine. So I would agree that would probably make more sense. So my proposal would still be to sell the property with the intent of developing at least 3, but up to 5 home sites there, and then preserving the rest, selling it to whomever wants to do that. That's going to keep it open to the public and make it accessible.
Thank you. Barbara, you're up.
Thanks. Okay. All right. I really kept to your 1 paragraph edict. But this is what I have to say. Our committee has been tasked with making recommendation to the select board regarding the use and disposition of the Methodist Hill property. We've talked to abutters, neighbors, recreation, conservation committees, blah, blah, blah. We have received solicited and unsolicited information from various sources. We have studied the history, topography, and considered the consequences of all the possibilities. We have discussed the Hinshaw's offer with the Hinshaws and within the committee. The Hinshaws also commissioned a professional forester's report, which was not shared with the committee. It was shared with me, though.
Yeah, it was shared with everybody.
Was it shared with
Yeah.
everybody?
It's 85 pages.
They did send it to me.
Yeah.
I got it from the forester. Just my
You
shot.
should have got it from me too.
I got it.
Good, right out until I saw big ones.
Didn't get it.
Maybe your computer said ouch.
Earhart sent it to me. After consideration of the above, I strongly recommend that the select board sell at public auction, which means to me, not a sealed bid, the land with stipulations that the land stays intact, that the purchaser would be obligated to retain the land as a town forest, accessible as a public recreation area, with restrictions, as Tom said, for hunting and snowmobiling, and that the purchaser be able to build a private residence if desired. I would also recommend that the purchaser create an access area that would accommodate at least 6 cars. I would suggest that the Upper Valley Land Trust be consulted regarding language protecting this land and urge the purchaser to discuss with them a permanent transfer to that organization if and when they choose to dispose of the land. And that's it.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
You're fine.
Maybe
you can
the
have
thing to
one.
do is scan these and put them in the minutes. Maybe. I'm not saying that.
Oh, okay.
That was fine.
Who's, ever get?
Okay, now,
Next.
Ryan, you're next.
I'll get it after, you're good.
I would say my opinion's relatively unchanged. I would, I would favor the property just being sold as one parcel. Obviously, it almost goes unstated saying that part of that property can't be developed anyway. It would be nice to say that we can maintain public access to that portion of the property that no one would develop anyway. So whether that's 80 acres or 80% or however you want to, categorize that, but I think putting that in the parcel sale would ensure public access to some of the property. But I would be in favor of just one sale. I don't know that we need to dictate, exactly what is done on that property. If there's 4 homes, if there's 5 homes, they have to come, they have to abide by the rules of the zoning. Unless that's decided upon, unless there's a decision to change that. But I think it should be a relatively level playing field that anyone that would want to purchase the property that has the resources is interested in buying that property can buy the property. And if it's a builder, a developer, if they're willing to buy that property, knowing that 80% of it's undevelopable, that's their business, right? Like they know whether or not that makes sense for their business. Versus if there's someone in the area or outside of the area that's interested in just owning the property and they're willing to compete against the prices for a developer, then it's a level playing field. But it makes it a lot easier on us to allow, we're incorporating our local public's opinions on protecting a portion of that property, a large portion of that property for public access, but we're also letting the market, decide what can happen with the small portion of land that actually can be developed. And if someone's truly interested in purchasing that for the purpose of preserving it as a forest in 100%, then they can purchase it for that purpose. And if there's a builder or developer that's interested in developing 4 houses, then they can do that, But I would be in favor of less like prescription of the details of what's done with that subsection of the lot that's actually developable, and letting all interested parties participate in the purchase.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I should say, welcome to the Hinshaws who are with us, and also to Mr. Kiley, Mr. Bianco, and Harrison Drinkwater. Hi, we're glad you're here. Now it's my turn. The 100-acre property.
You want us two to go?
Yeah, Donna, Kevin and Ed going to work members.
They're going to be after me.
Oh, okay. I just misunderstood you when you said you were gonna do
Because,
that.
because they're here because they're officials.
Saving the best for last time. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We're members of the committee.
This is what I have to say. I think there's one there for those guys. Proposal to the Enfield Select Board. The 100-acre property on Methodist Hill should be sold at public auction with the following conditions. 1, there's 20%, 20 acres of land along Methodist Hill Road, which could be developed as house lots. These lots shall be 5 acres according to the Enfield zoning ordinance. Number 2, there shall be public access to the back 80%, 80 acres from Methodist Hill Road with a reasonable parking area. 3, trails, etc. for recreation may be developed on the 80% lot with the agreement of the Town Recreation Commission. And I put it that way because they don't want to put any money in it. And number 4, the 80% lot shall not be subdivided as it is unsuitable for development or building. And then I just said this will require, I think you said that if you sell it at public auction, there's got to be an article on the warrant, and any other sort of plan would cost Enfield a whole lot of money. So that's why I think we need to sell it at public auction. And that's what I had to say. Kevin?
Cool. I'm probably gonna be the one that flips the most. I last time said we should keep it. I did some talking with Ed because I was confused on a few things that I did look up, but I'm now on the stand. I think we should sell it. I just don't think the town right now needs to be taking on more stuff. I mean, I think we already got our plate full with a lot of great things that's making the town better and improving it. So I'm fully in selling it, with the stipulations that the part of the land that cannot be developed be kept open. If they want to build 1, 3, 5 houses on it, that's them. I don't feel that that's my place to say. I know the Drinkwaters have said they'd like a place for, Drinkwaters.
Hinshaws.
Hinshaws, my bad, sorry. The Hinshaws have said they'd like to build something for grandkids. I think that's great. The Patches have said that they would just like to, use it for agricultural stuff. Either way, cool with me. I do understand that there is housing that is a shortage here in Enfield. As someone who just moved here a year and 6 months ago, I fully know the shortage and had to move farther away to find a suitable house. So I get that, but I think that should be up to the landowner on how much they develop it and what they want to do with it. But I do think that something that must be stressed a little bit is to keep some trails open, because that part of town doesn't have a Hughes Park, a Shaker Ball Field, Colette Brook Trail, those kind of things. So that's kind of their little escape that they do have. So I do think that a stipulation should be put on where that's still open to the public, but otherwise get rid of it.
Mr. Morris.
I'm very much in agreement with Tom and Jason down there. I think we're splitting hairs on the details, but I think, we're looking at that 20 to 25 acres in the corner that I do think we should stipulate as being developable. That's where the town's going to get some sort of income from this property by building some houses and getting the tax revenue from that. If they kept it all natural, put it in current use, we'd get almost nothing off of that property for a long, long time, which is fine. I do think we need to keep some of it open for people to go, but I think stipulating the 3 to 5 houses being developed in that corner is where the public gets the gain from in this property.
Thank you. Okay, well, it sounds to me like we agree that this needs to be sold at public auction, because we're concerned about what it's gonna cost the town any other way. So, and that we agree that the 20 acres along Methodist Hill Road could be developed
I don't know.
according to the zoning
I
ordinance.
don't know that I would smash it in a 20-acre box, because if they did 5 houses, it would be 25 acres.
Well, yeah, but we didn't, but the other thing I think we all agree is that there needs to be public access, which means 4 houses and 1 lot or part of a lot to become a parking area, and the rest of it, the 80%, the 80 acres, becomes available to the public for whatever recreation uses the new owner might determine. Because it would be up to the new owner, it wouldn't be up to us. But I think we want to have a condition in the deed that 80%, 80 acres, however many acres you decide, should be available to the public. And with a parking area, I think the parking area is an excellent idea. And people who buy it could consult with the Recreation Commission or not. The Recreation Commission was clear that they didn't want to put any money in it, but they thought it would be good for recreation when they sat and talked to us. And I think the condition that the part that can't be developed, that 80% can't be developed, that should be a condition on the deed. So now, how do we want to change this?
Well, I'd like to talk about this current use designation. Who decides that it goes into current use? Is that the town or the state?
The property
No,
owner.
the owner applies.
So it seems to me that part of it could be put in current use. And it's all or nothing for current use?
No, if they develop a section, then the developed section
But if
gets
it's-
pulled out, but if it's not, then cannot be put in. That's not something.
So if it's developable land,
Hmm.
it still doesn't matter.
No, it still doesn't matter.
So I'd recommend, and this is outside the purview of this committee. I'd recommend that the town, and this is in regard to housing. The town should get rid of this 5-acre business where you can't subdivide under 5 acres and you can't subdivide it. I'm in a situation where I've got too much land at an acre, but I can't subdivide. And I think that that's a hamstring for the town. An effort should be made to change that to create decent low-cost housing.
Well, it was changed. You can put in 2 ADUs now.
It's still ridiculous. I mean, I don't think this, in regard to adding houses on that property, I don't think this is the answer. And I think it's a waste of our time and energy to talk about subdividing it when the new owners, whoever they are, can decide either they subdivide it or they leave it the way it is. I don't think this is the answer for us for housing.
Okay, so now we have to craft a proposal.
I have a couple of points to make. One, my worry is we don't subdivide it and designate 20 acres as a separate lot, that it'll be bought and never developed. And so that defeats what we're hoping to achieve, is to get some housing up there.
But I don't think, is that our responsibility to create a situation where the town makes money? I don't,
The town, the problem is that the town mustn't make money.
Well, I think going forward is what she means, and I think
Yeah.
if you have an opportunity to do that, it's in everyone's best interest, for the most part. I mean, obviously with,
I just don't
Caveats.
feel like it's our business.
What I think is our business, Barbara, is to make sure that the town doesn't end up with having to pay a couple $100,000 to the previous owner.
It's ours to make a recommendation to the select board of what we think is the best use of that land.
I have
can't,
hearing aids and I still didn't understand what you said.
Said it's our job to make a recommendation to the select board what we think is the best use of that land for the town.
and I think we've come to the point where we say the best use of the land is to sell it at a public auction, so that the town doesn't have to pay a whole lot of money to the previous
Oh, I
owner.
think we all agree.
I think we all agree with that, right?
If we agree to sell.
Okay, and that we can put conditions on the deed. So that the parts that's not, that, well, Susan, that the parts that cannot be developed will never be developed. Nobody will ever try to develop that back lot, that 80 acres.
Right.
We can put that as a condition on the deed. We can put a condition on the deed that there needs to be public access. We can put a condition there to the back part, to the part that can't be developed, that there has to be a way for the public to get to it. Your parking area with your 6 parking places.
So I'll just make a little comment that Earhart made a comment in his report that this scenario of having house lots in the front and having the property that's available to the public to the back is intimidating, or could be intimidating to the homeowners. And I got the feeling that he said he didn't think it was a good idea at all.
Yeah, but they can never close
But he
that
lives in
class 6
Bedford.
road, so there's.
But
always
he
gonna
also
be-
talked about that class six road as being impassable, and he didn't, I might be misremembering, but I think he made the point that it's not correctable because of the water on it.
Yeah, but it's still a
It's still
way.
a public way.
Still a way they can access it, because they can never close it, so. And if you're going in to hike it, you're not gonna worry about hiking into the trail you're going to. I mean, most people hike to a trailhead anyways. So I think if we put a caveat on it where we said, hey, you have to develop the front 5 lots and then leave the back open, I think you're gonna sell the land a lot easier. I think once you start putting more caveats where it has to have a parking lot, it has to do this, I think that's where it becomes harder to sell, because when you start asking people to do more stuff to the land before they can do stuff, I think that's where it becomes a challenge to buy, because I'm not gonna wanna put $100,000 to build a parking area. So,
Yeah,
me, I think if we wanna do
But
a
otherwise- But
recommendation.
otherwise you'd buy it.
But there should be public access.
No.
Don't you think if the goal was like, we'll prevent common use for one portion of the land, whether that's a $5 or $10 million house or $4 or $5 million houses, what's the difference? It's still, the goal really is preventing or trying to prevent 100% of that lot being common use, right? So I guess that's where I kind of think about, you know, if someone wants to buy it and build an estate or a house there, right? They can build, it's going to be tax assessed a lot higher than 4 single homes. But that may be, with the current environment, that may actually be what's most economical for, you know, for a builder, right? To do one massive house, right? So, I guess that's my question would be, if we're trying to carve that out and say, like, can we prevent common use from being the entirety of the land? Is there much of a difference? Prescribing 4 or 5
I
houses or what?
don't understand what you're saying, because you're saying there should be public access, but we can't say so.
No, I would still say that the undeveloped portion of land should remain the public access sphere.
He's saying,
Yeah.
instead of saying like we separate it to 5 houses that are roughly 200,000, what's if someone wants to come in and take where those 5 houses are and put a $4 to $5 million
That
house?
actually may be a
Oh,
higher
I-
tax.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
then
for the
you
town.
can still, you're still gonna get taxes, the town's still gonna make
Yeah.
something, but is that what you're?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. So that's where,
Which that's where I'm kind of at, is I don't wanna, my opinion, I didn't want to say, hey, you can only build this because that's my girlfriend working at Dartmouth. I know there's a bunch of doctors that are homeless and are looking to build, and they're buying them at Mascoma Lake and making them into these big mansions, which is making the lake, you know, hard to buy into. So that's why I don't want to say, but I mean, I get the making it 5 lots and building 5 different houses, because there is a housing shortage. So I'm kind of either or on that, right?
But what I thought was that we should say that only the front part can be developed and not tell them how. Is you can only develop where you got frontage on Methodist Hill Road, and whatever size lots you make, they've got to be a minimum of 5 acres because it's an R5 zoning district. But if you want to sell one lot that's 10 acres, or you want to sell the whole piece, go ahead and sell it. But that's the only place you can develop it, was what I was thinking.
Well, this is why I was originally wanted the town to subdivide it, is I'm trying to, if we're looking at breaking off a piece to do housing, I was looking sort of towards the future, and if we did sell it without those stipulations, you run the risk of the land going into current use, which is fine for the immediate future, but it does take away any future tax revenue that we would get. Which is why I wanted to keep them already subdivided below 10 acres at least, because I think 10 acres is what you need to put in. You only need 5 to do current.
But
no, you need 10 to do current use. So if we did 5 or 4 or 5 acre
Right.
lots.
So that's why I sort of went down that road, was just so we can guarantee that
Well-
there's some revenue.
Current use, the way I understand it, my land in Haverhill was in current use, and it was to try to keep more land in agriculture. And if you decided that you didn't want to do the agriculture anymore and you took it out of current use, there's a fairly heavy fee that you have to pay to take it out of current use, and then it goes back on the tax rolls. So I don't think that current use is something that really applies here, is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Think about your own land you just talked
Natural-
about.
Could put it in current use.
Natural forested land can go in current use.
You could put it in current use. Yes, you could. With the knowledge that if you ever change your mind about it, you gotta pay.
Yeah.
So, we gotta be correct about current use.
is the town prepared to pay for a surveyor to go and survey it properly to create this?
We could do that if it was a recommendation.
But we don't have to just sell it.
But we could also put a caveat where the person who buys it has to do that. Make it on their dime, not our dime. Not out of your tax pay, your tax base, make it out of theirs.
That's where my recommendation was to build 3 to 5 housing lots. It gives a little flexibility, but says you have to build a few houses there.
That you have
Yeah.
to build the houses?
They have to build them. You can put a reverter clause where if they don't build them in a certain amount of time, it comes back to the town.
But,
Oh, God, that would be awful.
yeah, but you're not saying, you're saying that the purchaser would be required to peel that land off, sell it to someone else, and they'd be required to put houses on there? I've just never heard of anything like that.
Oh, yeah, we did it all the time.
No, I don't
Usually
like
it's single
that.
lots, but we had reverter clauses on stuff all the time in Claremont that you will buy this and you will develop it. And if you don't, then the town owns it again in 5 years.
My parents did that on their lake.
Yeah.
They got free land, but they had to make sure that they built a house.
Sounds like,
So Ed,
The
in that
Oklahoma
scenario you're
purchase.
talking about, are we subdividing the property?
We could do it either way. We could subdivide and do it, or we could say, here's 100 acres of land, you have to build 3 to 5 houses on the developable floor.
and then the purchaser pays for the survey, the
Subdivision.
town approves the land that's pulled off for housing, or do they have the complete control of it, the purchaser?
They have to go to the planning board,
They'll have some of it, but they have to follow zoning to do it.
and they have to go to the planning board. We're done. When we go to the select board and we present them with our proposal, we're done. We don't have any more to say.
It would go to market that way with the restriction.
So exactly what are you saying no to?
I'm saying that they do not have to come to planning board if they have 4 or 5 acre lots. They're within the zoning, does not go to zoning board. If I can build a house on my 5 acre lot. There's no planning board in there unless they want to put cluster development on one lot. But if there's 4, 5 acre lots, they can build on it.
Except for
It's
the
within
15
zone.
feet to the border.
Yeah, they have to follow. zoning.
Yeah,
They have to follow zoning.
They've got 250 feet along Methodist Hill Road, which limits the way you can divide that.
250 feet on the road.
Yeah.
The lot has to have 250 today. Like you said, zoning could change it to you.
and should.
Well, there's
Well,
gonna
but
be
it
a complete
hasn't.
rewrite
So
in
we
the
have
next
to do
18
well,
months.
But that's their found money as far as I can see.
We have to do, we today have to go with what's on the books now.
I would kind of be interested to see what the Hinshaws think of the 100 acres being sold.
We need to come up with our proposal and then we'll
Yeah.
ask them,
We also need to
okay?
be careful
But
with that, because we're not
Okay.
allowed to sell to a single person.
No, I know that. I'm just,
No, first
Can
we
you
have
say
to
that
come up
again?
with
We're
our
not allowed to
proposal.
sell a single parcel?
You can't make a recommendation to sell.
Oh,
to
yeah.
them. It's gotta be an open
But-
public.
Yeah, we'll take public comments after we've come up with our proposal on your computer or my computer.
Yeah.
And the first thing on it, we've decided is that it will be sold at public auction, right? Everybody agreed to
I
that
would
part?
just say it needs to be sold.
Hmm?
It should be sold.
That it should be sold. And I think we'd like to say public auction because that's the way you get away with paying the lease to the previous owner, right?
Not
No.
necessarily. There's multiple ways the town. could
Okay,
sell.
so we want to say that it needs to be sold. Okay, the town needs to sell the property. Now, do we want to put conditions on it and what are the conditions?
I think that's where we're at. We're kind of a split group of just sell it. I think everybody has a little bit of the condition of the undevelopable section.
Maybe,
Should be public
yeah,
access.
that the undevelopable 80%
I wouldn't even say 80%.
remain undeveloped. That that the back 80% remain undeveloped. Can we say that?
I wouldn't put a number on
I
it.
would-
I would just say the
I put the
undevelopable part.
undevelopable section in the back.
And that's been,
In the back, okay, remain undeveloped
and
forever.
I think the undevelopable part has been defined by Earhart and a
Yeah, but,
number of people. It's been clear.
but if they sell it, we gotta be careful not to be too picky. We gotta be careful to be general enough so that people will want to buy it,
Mhm.
and we can limit some of what they do, but not everything. So that the back part, I said 80 acres because I thought we might have to have a figure in there.
I don't think we do, and if we do, I would lowball that a little bit.
Okay,
gonna put a
that the
condition.
back part, which is considered to be not developable, remain
Public access.
undeveloped.
Right.
Okay, now, we have to come up with something to do about the front part, and that's where there seems to be some disagreement. I think the only thing we all agree is that the public have access to the back part. Is that correct?
Yeah, agree with that,
Does the public have access to the back part of the land?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Do we want to tell them how to do that, or are we done?
I think you generalize it, that the back undeveloped section remains public access with. Well,
Remain,
means public access and there is access made available.
that's the language is wrong. Remain available to the public. Remain available to the public, that the back undeveloped piece remain available to the public.
Yeah, we need something in there about making it available, making it accessible.
Yeah,
We don't need to say you need to build a parking lot or a trail, but it needs to be accessible to the public.
that's what I said, you need, that the back piece needs to be available to, must be available to the public. Or shall be available to the public. You gotta say shall, don't you, in legal language?
No, because this is a recommendation to the select board. You're not writing the.
Oh, okay.
I do think it's sort of important to provide access away from Methodist Hill Road. There's no shoulder, there's no place that people can park. I think it is important.
But I'm not sure that we are the people that can say that.
Really.
Yeah, we're just a committee. We
can
aren't
make
gonna
our
make any
recommendation.
decisions about this. We can't. We can recommend to the select board that, we could say as an aside, we recommend to the select board that there be some kind of parking, but you can't do much more than that, Barbara.
You can put that in the recommendation.
I think,
Because we're just a committee. We aren't making the decision about what they're gonna do. We can just tell them that we have talked to everybody in the entire world about this. And we have thought about it.
I don't think we
that
talked to
we
anybody
think
about
they ought to sell it, that the undeveloped part needs to remain undeveloped, and that there be public access to the undeveloped part. But we can't tell them to have a parking lot.
We can recommend that it gets stipulated for conservation only though, correct, Ed?
We could.
And the reason I
But
say
if you
that
put
is
it
we
in
know that
conservation.
Patch Farms is interested in it.
Mhm.
And if they buy it and they have cap lines running all over the place, it's not gonna be good for trails.
I heard a rumor the other day, Tom, that Patches just thought that since the Hinshaws wanted, that they aren't interested anymore.
That's a
We
rumor.
won't.
I don't know.
We don't know about that. We don't know whether buyers might come out of the blue and do this. So,
That's true.
you know, they could come in and they may buy it and decide that they're gonna wanna use it for clear cutting
Yeah,
down.
Ryan lives over there. Maybe he wants to buy it.
But
Sorry,
he's got
like,
two
don't put that
kids
out
to support.
there.
Why not put a restriction
Has to be
in
30
there
years.
that's gonna be, so it'll be, ensure they'll be used for what we think is best use for it. And that's why I'm saying I think it should be specified as for conservation use only. I think
I don't.
that covers
disagree
that.
with
So is there
that,
anybody that
but I
disagrees?
don't know if we
Nobody
can do it, but I don't disagree.
Don't disagree.
We can recommend it.
we can recommend that the back piece be put in conservation. With public access. Does that,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
Kevin?
think we all agree on that.
yeah, we can agree on all that, we can all agree on that. Okay, can you read us back what we've got?
I'm gonna put a number in there for you. I just got bullet points right now that we sell the property. That 70 to 80 acres in the back that's undevelopable be put into conservation and remain public access with some sort of accessibility for the public, and then I put a parking lot question mark next to my notes. Now we need to figure out if we're gonna recommend any development or not in the plan. And from there, I think. we can write something.
Personally,
We're
I
probably
think
just
that
gonna
that's
sell
up to the buyer, not up to us. As the committee, I don't think we say, if somebody says, what's the committee thinking? You say, well, you can have up to 5 lots, but you gotta have 250 feet on Methodist Hill, and it's not up to us to tell them that. It's up,
I disagree with you.
Yeah, I sort of disagree too.
Again, I mean, we can all throw our
it
opinions.
doesn't
out. We're gonna
seem right to
vote
me to
later.
require people to develop land.
I do when you're selling it to them at a reasonable price because it's town property. That's how development works.
And
Well,
We
it
do it
puts the
all the
onus
time.
on them instead of the town. And I think having the town, be a real estate agent, I think is counterproductive.
No, I don't think the town should sell the lots. I don't think the town should develop the lots,
Or
but I
even
think
spend-
you can require the buyer to develop, to put 25 houses on 5 acres. I mean, you can.
That starts making
But you
sense.
can require the developer to, you can require the buyer to develop a piece of the land.
That's what towns and cities do with their land all the time, is make those requirements.
And you think that's what do you think, Tom?
I think we wanna do that. My opinion is the two different options, selling as one property or as two. To me, it seems like two is cleaner, but I could go either way with it, but to me, it seems like two properties is cleaner. That way you have one property that's gonna be for conservation use only, and you'll have one buyer for that. And then you'll have the other property that's, we wanna have developed into homes, you'll have a different buyer for that.
But we might get too much money that way. Jason, what do you think?
I'm not worried about too much money.
We won't, it's not us, it's the town's not gonna be lost on anything. If it sells for more, then those that think the previous owner should get some money will.
And it's,
Okay, if
and
they,
it's irrelevant to the town at that point, doesn't matter.
right, so it's not money out of the town's pocket.
Yeah.
It's
So you
money out of the
think
buyer's
that we
pocket.
need to require some development?
I think we should, yes. I think
Okay.
like Ed said, that's sort of how development works. The trade-off is that the land is gonna be sold at a most likely at a lower price than if it were just an open market sale from a private seller.
Barbara, what do you
I
think?
don't feel as strongly as you do. But if that's needed, or, I'll go along with it. I just don't feel strongly about it.
Right?
To make money in the future.
Yeah, I'm in favor of the least restrictions, to be honest. But it does sound like, it would facilitate the sale of a property to a developer if you had the ability to control the price of that sale. So I would defer to the more experienced members of the committee.
Kevin?
I'm kind of with Ryan. I think the least stipulation, but I mean, I'm completely in for saying that it needs to be developed. Because otherwise I do fear that it will go undeveloped and then the town misses out on a chance of making something up of it.
Okay. So have we got a proposal?
Oh, do we?
Well, I think
I think it's
everybody
really
agrees
close
that
to-
there be some requirement for some development.
Do we have to state how many, like, properties we think, like 3, 5 that need to be
I don't think we
developed?
need to have that many. I mean, I crafted mine to say 3 to 5 because I know you can get at least 3 there easily. And I don't think we wanna smash more than 5 into that little developable area.
That was kind of
Even
my
if they
exact
can
thinking.
figure it out. So that 3 to 5 nook gives them a little bit of flexibility, but it guarantees the town will at least get 3 homes up there that'll be tax income for the future.
And I was also kind of thinking 5 because I do want to be sensitive to the people across the street. You know, if somebody came in, you can develop any piece of land with the right amount of money. And the right incentives. So,
Yeah.
you know, I didn't want somebody to come in and be like, you know what, we're gonna squeeze 20 in there. Cause
Well,
that's
what
just
if
not,
somebody
that's
wants-
not a rural community anymore, so.
What if somebody wants to put a hotel there?
Or how about a trailer park?
You're talking zoning regulations.
It's got cluster housing. I remember Kevin saying it was zoned for cluster housing.
No, it's 5 acres only, one house per 5 acres. But what if somebody, so what you're saying is it
I think
needs
that's
to
what
be
Jason-
houses, not a house.
Well, I think that's what Jason was just saying, with, you know, if you put that parameter, you're looking out for some of the neighbors too, by not allowing 20, 25 units or a mobile home park that takes up half the,
So to say 3 to 5 makes sense.
I believe it does. We have a
So-
committee here that needs to make that.
Do we
decision.
agree with that?
So if there were a stipulation that they had to build 5 houses there and somebody bought all 5 lots and built their dream house,
They've got-
that would be against the stipulations and not acceptable.
They would need to build at least 3.
That makes sense to me from what,
That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
it makes some sense to me
I mean,
because,
I understand it, but
yeah. Well,
I think
and
it's
partly,
too, I think it's a burden on on the purchaser.
but people, I don't know.
I think it's a pretty light burden myself. I think once subdivided, it's gonna sell pretty easily. It's a tough market. If people can get buildable land that's in a desirable location, they're not gonna have a problem.
But remember
It's
Mr.
probably expensive to
Renahan,
build on those front
the
lots.
contract?
To God,
Yeah.
these decent houses.
And we know what the lot across the street just sold.
I know,
2.5 acres.
But did
so-
you see the look on his face when he started talking about the developing across the way? He made it sound like it was a tough, it would be very tough to do that.
Who, Keller?
Kelleher.
Yeah.
So I think to go along with what you're saying, having a range of 3 to 5 lots is probably smart. Because you may not be able to get 5 in there.
Right.
And what happens to the owner then, the purchaser, if you can't put,
He's buying it with that understanding.
It's business.
That's
but
that's
if
the
there's
whole
a
idea.
specific requirement that they put X number of houses on there and they can't sell that, and they can't find anybody to agree to build a house, what are the consequences for them?
To sell it, they want.
Go back to the select board.
But-
And say, this is what
Well, the
we've
select
tried
board
to
can work
do,
with them.
change the stipulation.
Making a recommendation on what we'd like to see done.
If they come up with something else and say we say 3 to 5 and someone walks in and says, I want to build one house, but it's going to be this big. They can go to the select board, work with the select board and say, can you work with me? I'm sure the select board's going to be like, we're going to equal what it would be for 3. I'm sure the select board's not going to be like, nope, we said 3 to 5.
What if we said
Right.
no greater than 5? That gives the builder a lot of
There you go.
flexibility. No greater than 5. That gives the builder flexibility.
No more
We
than
also, no more
5.
than 5.
No less than.
We heard a lot of people come in and talk with us
No
like over the last,
fewer than 3,
how many
no
months has it
more
been? How
than
many years
5.
have we been
How many
coming?
years?
That's mine.
We heard a lot of
I think
people come in
it's
and
really up to the town.
I heard, we
One
heard
big
one
house
person
Don't help as much.
say they thought building.
It was pretty rare we heard, it was pretty rare we heard an opinion from like the public that came in about building. It was like kind of the exception to the rule. A lot of folks were about preserving it, so I guess the step of saying like, we're taking a step from not wanting to have the property conserved or going to conservation to develop. think we want to just kind of be mindful and cognizant of like what we've heard for the last couple of years we've been coming here.
Are you,
Couple months, sir,
I was gonna say. we've
I
been
can
here for-
agree to your
but.
3 to
yeah,
5.
Yeah,
I can agree to you 3 to 5 at this point. But if that's the way it's generally done in other towns in New Hampshire.
Don't use
that's
Claremont as an example. I'm sorry.
It's not just Claremont.
It's not just Claremont, that's how Lebanon does it, that's how most places do it.
Nah, Claremont doesn't count, does
It really doesn't. Don't quote us. Oh, go ahead.
Well, he laughed.
report.
Come
Go
on.
ahead. I know it well.
He feels the same way. Anyway,
No, that's just how.
okay, so the last piece says that the buyer shall develop 3 to 5, is develop the right verb? 3 to 5 houses? You don't say build,
I
you say
just-
develop, right?
Either one works. I
Okay,
think you're getting too picky there. We're making a recommendation.
okay, so have we got it now? That it be sold at public auction,
Be sold.
that the back
Period,
lot,
end of story.
that the back lot
We can do 70.
go in conservation and be available to the public. And that the buyer develop 3 to 5 house lots.
I can't,
So,
in my heart of hearts, I cannot agree to that. I will just say, okay. I just think it's
Have to remember
it's
that,
hamstringing the purchaser.
Yeah, but it could also motivate because they know that they have to sell 3 of the lots and that might recoup some of the money they spent into buying that parcel. I mean, if you think about it, like, if I'm not gonna buy it, but
You're
if,
talking about your well. Are you gonna put a bid on it?
no, heck no.
Just asking.
I want a 911 GT3 RS or a Toyota Supra. I want cars. I don't want land. So,
okay,
but what I'm saying is if we go and write this up, I mean, it might induce someone to maybe be more interested in it because they're like, well, I have to develop it. There's already development across the street. They can reach out to that developer, say, hey, I have 2 lots that I need to develop. Houses are selling like hotcakes. If they sell it to a developer or they themselves hire the developer to develop it, then they sell it themselves. It might be a little more motivating because they can recoup some of the money. I mean, you
But
build
I-
it.
Listen, we talked to dozens of people. One person thought it was a good idea to develop. And Mr. Kelleher thought that it was dicey to develop. And for us to come up with this
He's a
plan.
developer. He's gonna tell you it's dicey, so he has no one else
Oh,
going in and wanting it, so he
Listen,
can
he
develop.
was tired. You could tell he didn't have the capacity to make up fairyland stories to us. But I do feel that that kind of recommendation is going against the wave of people we had wanting to just keep it as is. So we can do it, but I think it's a bad, I think it's not, I think it's bad faith to go that route.
Remember, we're having to recommend what's best for the town.
I think
And
the
if you
town
take-
can make that money other ways.
And you take the town's master plan involved, and the fact that there is, it's kind of like the NIMBY type thing, not in my backyard. I don't think any of butters or anybody that lives close by is gonna say, I want more houses there. It's usually not in my backyard, but we're running out of places to put homes in this.
I don't think that's the solution. I don't think that particular place with that particular infrastructure is the solution.
Well, if we're in an impasse, should we just take a vote?
sure, how do you vote?
I vote that we have in the wording that.
You gotta have a vote. We have to be voting on something.
Right, so I make
Yeah, we're
a,
voting on this 3 to 5 house stipulation on the deed.
I second it.
Aye.
Aye,
All in favor?
aye, okay,
Okay, I said.
All right, well,
it passes. Okay, we've got a proposal.
Now I
It's
have
a
just
good one.
one other thing I
You're
wanted to.
brilliant.
Susan? I have
Yes.
Something else I wanted to bring up on this, just having walked the property. I'm wondering, and this is just a question, but having walked the property, we're all talking about the access. The best access to that back acre, 80 acres, is right along the Hinshaw's property. I don't know if somehow we can stipulate that, I don't know if you want to call it 10 feet corridor, that's where the access is. Again, and I'm looking at you because I don't know how restricted we can be on this, but that is the best access to that property.
I don't think that we, as the committee, can do that.
I think we'd be general on that and just say that make it accessible to the public.
I think we have to
Okay,
say.
I just
it's
know
accessible.
walking it.
Yeah, no,
It's
I
like
just,
walking from the
I
other.
just don't think that we, as the committee,
I know it's
can
not.
tell them to
nicest,
do
but
that.
There is a class 6 road in there that'll guarantee a 20-foot swath or whatever down through there.
Yeah, that's true.
okay, the floor is open for public comments, and what's gonna happen is you're gonna circulate via email the proposal.
Glad I worked with Tom because his
And-
proposal is
and
very close to that.
We'll have it crafted on paper when we show up at the meeting on January 2nd. And if they ask us questions, we will answer them truthfully, no matter what our opinions are. We, okay,
I'll work with.
All right, now. the meeting is now open for public comment. Mr. Kiley?
Yeah, I think it's a great thing. The 3 to 5 works for me because you could have 2 5-acre lots and 1 10-acre lot. If you're looking to have, you could have a 10-acre lot on the southern side, 2 5s on the other side of the class 6 road. Or you could have the 5, but you know, if you want to have 1 large house and 2 smaller houses, that's how you can do it. Yeah, I agree. You can't stipulate too much. But I can see a reverter clause that says you have to build them within 24 months.
Mr. Bianco?
Probably
No
a little
comment.
more time than that, but
Mr. Drinkwater?
probably a little more time.
I want to just go back to what I guess I have 3 points that I just want to mention to the committee. Going back to the night when Jim Kelly was here, Jim being the developer, I was struck by a couple of things that he said. One is that the boneyard for development is often people who have great ideas about what it's going to look like or how to develop the infrastructure, and they have no means to pay for it up front. And I want to tie that to the Fieldstone Bridge development, because in their case, with 14, 15 months, they have a central driveway system that leads to one access point on Methodist Hill. And as a driver who's been up and down that hill many, many times in all conditions, that is a safe access point. I can see it in both directions on the hill. I won't skid into them because I can see and take the precautions for it.
It
My
doesn't,
concern is that if a developer comes along and says, I'm gonna do 3 to 5 houses, and I'm gonna have them individual access points along Methodist Hill.
but I don't think he can do that. I think he has to go to the DOT or to the town of Enfield for his driveway cut, right? He can't just make the driveway cuts where he wants them.
They'll have to be approved.
Right.
I didn't,
That's fine with that.
They'll have to get permits.
I can't hear you.
They will have to get permits.
They have to get a permit for a driveway cut, and the road people are the ones that decide where you get your driveway cut.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
I'm
think
sure that's what
single
happened
access
up
points-
there, that somebody said, look, you can see from both directions and it's safe, and that's where you can have your only access for those houses. So, that wouldn't be anything that, we could say the developer has to get a driveway cut from the people that do the roads. Whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 63.
I'll just leave it by saying it's a caution.
It's a good idea.
Please make sure that that's an
Yes.
enforceable idea.
The Henshaws are with us, and they
I
have,
don't think it's done yet.
oh,
Harrison was still talking. Harrison was still talking.
Harrison, you can
Okay.
continue.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I may have lost my track of
No.
thought. There is, no, I'm sorry, I've lost point number 2. Point number 3 actually is I wanted to thank you all for taking a look at this. And as a resident, I think you've done your very best to look at the pros and cons of what happens on Methodist Hill and tie it into the message that we want to have this work with the town as a whole. I think that's exemplary. I think it's my third point was that if we are serious about access for the public use of that, we have to be serious about a safe place to put cars that people drive to it. And Tom, to your point, the safest place is to have that landing area explored for possible parking, because that's as Alan Strickland has said, and you probably walked in, that's where you can have an access to the rest of the land that doesn't put you through the Class 6 road of McAllister. Yes, it's our public right of way, but it is below grade. And I know money can buy you lots of things, but that is a formidable Class 6 road to improve to anyone's point of view for walking. And once again, I just appreciate all the time that you spent on this.
Thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Hinshaw, the floor is yours.
Let me take a first stab at it. When we met the Patches after the first meeting, the thing that we had in that we both agreed to was we wanted to keep it open space. That's what Mrs. Patch's concern was. That's what our concern is, that we wanted it to be available to the public. But it just seems like these lots, I don't know how much income you're really going to get from them. I have no idea how to figure that out. But and we do worry about where that driveway is likely to be if you do that, because we know at our own driveways at the top of that hill, it's really uncomfortable because you can't always see, and people speed down that down that hill, whether they intend to or not. So I would be very concerned about if you decide to do that, where do you put that driveway? And I would think it needs to be lower down where it's flat, where you can see in both directions. But you know, we would be disappointed with this alternative, just to be clear about that. And I think the Patches would be too. And Jean will have a lot more to say about this because she's put a lot of time and effort into it. And it does seem to go against using it for nature. And that's really what our big issue was. So anyway, that's my knee-jerk reaction to the discussion. Obviously, you're going to make your own decisions, but I'm pretty sure the Patches will not be happy either, unless they've changed their minds. So, Jean?
Jean?
Yes, hi. I think that I appreciate and agree with what Parker has said. I think that's all true. I think that before we can get too prescriptive about how many houses could be developed potentially there, I think a lot more needs to be understood about what is really developable. From what I understand from Earhart and the other naturalist who worked with him, is the developable part is way further down the road on that flat part. It's very clear based on the soil content and things like that. So I do think that language, if you're trying to craft language, I think that saying no more than 5 is better than trying to say 3. I think 3 is closer to possible if development is what you want. But I also think that we really desire to kind of work something out based on what I think is the overarching objectives here. One, the town, and we have always said this, we want the town to be able to yield some revenue from this. It would be our hope that if we're able to buy the land, that somehow from the legal process, and I know that there's you know, evidence on both sides. I wish that at some point the town could get the revenues from the sale of the property in some fashion. I don't think it's feasible to think that forever, if the people cannot be found and if they haven't responded and they never show up, that it's fair that the town not be able to get the revenue from the sale of the land.
We know who the
We-
person is.
Sorry?
So we know who the owner is. We've talked to
Why didn't they ever?
him. They let it go.
I agree with you,
Okay.
Gene, that the town, but all the town can recoup
Yeah.
is the tax money and their expenses. That's all the town can recoup from the sale of this land. No matter how it's sold, no matter what the stipulations are, it's $36,000 plus their expenses. That's it. They can
Okay.
get, where the town gets revenue is if these lots are developed and taxes go to the town. And it won't be a lot to increase the tax base from what you said back at the beginning. And,
Yeah.
but that's the only way the town will get any money out of it is if some lots are turned into houses and the houses pay taxes.
Right, I understand. Yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you. So moving on from that first point, I guess that's a disappointment for us because that was our hope initially, that would be a nice thing for the town, right? But be that as it may, that's that issue. Then, so we get to tax revenues. So if we were to build a house, and I think that, a house or some structures or whatever, we've always said we wanted to reserve the right to do that because a lot of the conversation has been around conservation. So we wanted to say, okay, yes, we are in favor of conservation as well, but we want to reserve the right to build something. Understanding that we need to study the land and all of that kind of stuff. So, do we want to be pinned down to do something? And 24 months is not long enough to build anything anywhere. If you talk about getting plans put together and weather and, all of that stuff. So I don't think that's a reasonable period of time. I think 5 years would be, more reasonable, but we would in all likelihood be building something. And our goal would be for the tax revenues. We want that to go to the town. So I just want to be clear about that, that's, but having it be as prescriptive, I think it remains to be seen how developable the land is, where it is developable, and all before we get too prescriptive on numbers. So I think no more than is good language. I'll just say that. And then, I think there are other ways to explore the land getting revenues. Even if 3 houses are built, let's just say, okay, fine. We sell, lots to developers, or we keep one and we build something and then 2 others are built, something like that, whatever. But there are other ways, if we could make it a really attractive, open recreational space with nice trails and little educational stations and things like that. We've heard about and read about and seen stories about places where they do create, it's called rewilding, where open spaces that aren't productive anymore as farms or anything like that are allowed to go back to nature, but they're conserved in such a nice way that they're attractive. And then people can come, buses of school children can come, whatever. And so I just think if we put on our thinking caps here a bit and think about something other than just, developing houses, there could be other ways to supplement that. And I'm open to working with you to hear that. And I'll echo Parker's last point. I think so many people have spoken up in favor of conservation. I think we ought to make sure we're leaning in that direction too. That's what
Thank you very much. I think what can happen is if the person that buys the land, I think you're right about the no more than 5, but the person that buys the land can always go back to the select board and say, hey, look, this is what would be a better use for us for this land, and the select board can agree or not, whatever they decide to do, that, it has to be, I'm convinced that it has to be sold with the stipulation that at least some of it stays in conservation. I think you're right about that. But I think that you can also know that, if things change and it comes clear that something else needs to be done, that you can go to the town and you can say, look, this isn't gonna work, but we could do X, Y, or Z. And that they would listen to you and agree with you because they want the best use too.
But that's asking a lot of the purchaser to,
Well, no, I don't know. I just think that, I think that we can't just sell it without some stipulations. And we could, I mean, we could just sell it, go to public auction and sell it. With no
well,
stipulations,
we have to have stipulations, obviously,
but we wanna have stipulations for conservation, you're right. Questions, complaints, outcries of pain and rage. Tom?
No, I think what we have and what we've agreed to is a good recommendation.
Jason?
I agree.
I think what Harrison said about the traffic, I think a lot of what Gene said is a possibility for that land is way more something we should contemplate before stipulating houses. I think it's a bad move, but I'm just one person.
Right?
I would prefer the no more than 5 houses phrase, but otherwise,
That's good,
I
because
sign
that
on.
gives it more flexibility.
I sign on.
And is the time that it has to be done in set in the RSAs?
No, and we didn't say a time.
Okay, and we
I
didn't
think
say a time that it had to be
Good,
done
I think
either.
we leave that to the select
Let
board
the
to
select board
determine.
do that.
Yeah.
Kevin?
I'm good with it.
Okay, thank you all. We have only to approve, well, all that's left for this meeting is to approve the minutes of December 5th. As they are corrected, they now say December 5th instead of November 21st. And there are no typographical errors. It's beautifully done. The chair will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
I need a motion first.
I'll
Oh, oh, I thought you said you are doing the motion. Okay, I second.
Okay, Tom and Jason. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? No? Okay, the minutes are approved. Is there any other business? This is our very last meeting. The next time we get together, we will be at the select board with paper in our hands to give to them and get congratulated for what we did. Because as I have said, I think we have talked to everybody we could possibly find to talk to. We have listened to them and we have thought carefully about what our task was, and we have completed our task with intelligence and honor, and they should be proud of us. I'm proud of you. Thank you. So we'll see you all January 2nd at the meeting. And I thank you, gentlemen, for helping us, because it's been very helpful to have you here and talk to us about what we needed to do. And I think we've done it. So it doesn't need a second, but I could take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're We're adjourned.
You and Mr. Roberts.
Sadly, weekly closings.
6:49. You did a good job. You really did.
What?
Accomplished.
Well, I'm a purchasing logistics manager. So, but there was at one point in time, I had something to